Many of the folks were still loyal to the crown, and in their writings they will express their loyalty to the crown. However, they say British Parliament is performing unconstitutional acts, and we want those acts to stop. That Penelope Barker, the lady I mentioned to you before, she expresses similar sentiments in what has become known as the Edenton Tea Party, where women signed a petition protesting the Tea Act. This made European news. This is a cartoon from an English magazine. I forget the name of the magazine. But imagine there are folks in London who sit down in parlors, they open up the newspapers, and they see a cartoon about the political events occurring in Edenton. In fact, James Iredale's brother, the guy who lived in Edenton, who became the first justice on the U.S. Supreme Court, his brother, Arthur, lived in London at the time. Arthur opened up the newspaper, saw this, and it prompted him to write a letter to his brother, which basically, he's basically asking, what in the world is going on in Edenton? Has the world been turned upside down? That's not his words, but that's essentially what he's asking. During this time in Edenton in 1774, there was some examples. Well, there was a committee of safety that was formed. A committee of safety basically was a group of men who were watchdogs for any type of loyal expression in the area. They were trying to foster a sense of wiggery in the town. And one man by the name of Cullen Pollock allegedly expressed loyalist sentiment, an opposing political view. They took the man from his home in the middle of the night, dragging him to the courthouse lawn, where a lot of public activities took place, with his wife in pursuit, yelling, screaming, crying, according to sources, and they tarred and feathered him on the courthouse lawn. And then, add insult to injury, they went back to his house and drank his stock of liquor. Another example, there are many more, but I'll have to refrain from telling you. This is in the church, St. Paul's Church. This is the test, and sorry that the photo's a little blurry, but that's the best I could do. The one thing to notice is that the date is the 19th of June, 1776. That's before July 4th, 1776, obviously. But that's important, I wanted to bring that out, is because the St. Paul's vestry, and some of those fellas were the ones who dragged Cullen Pollock out to the courthouse lawn. But some of these members of the vestry of St. Paul's Church pledged to support the decisions of the continental and provincial congresses. In it, they express allegiance to the crown, but they oppose taxes levied on them by the British Parliament. Again, it goes back to that unsteady relationship that was developing after the French and Indian War. And they pledged this before the Declaration of Independence. So the area was a place of grassroots activity, if I can use modern terms, but it's also a place of intellectual thought. You have people approaching problems from different ways. Some are more politically active. Then you have some who pick up the quill, and they use that as their sword. And one is James Iredale. He was a leading pamphleteer during the time, where he is opposing what he considers to be unconstitutional acts by the British Parliament. Two of his more famous writings are To the Inhabitants of Great Britain and Principles of an American Whig. Those are two examples of the pamphlets that he pens. And To the Inhabitants of Great Britain, he is appealing to the British sense, or what he thinks is the British sense and respect of proper constitutionalism. He argues that American colonists had the same rights as Englishmen. And in this pamphlet, he harkens back to the colonial charters. He's saying these were the original agreements. British Parliament is acting unconstitutionally and not abiding by the original colonial charters. He also argues that there should be no taxation without representation. Have you heard that before? And in this pamphlet, he counters some of William Blackstone's arguments, and he did so the same year that Thomas Jefferson put forth similar arguments in a summary view of the rights of British North America. So basically, folks in different parts of what become the United States and various American colonies, many of these intellectuals are talking to each other. They're writing pretty much the same thing. They have similar thoughts. In Principles of an American Whig, Iredell listed 19 grievances. And if you read them, they sound really familiar to what's later included in the Declaration of Independence. Because if you remember the Declaration of Independence, the majority of it, we remember the introductory paragraph and the concluding paragraph, but the meat of it is a list of grievances against the British Parliament. And you look at the language with the Declaration of Independence and compare it with the 19 grievances listed in Principles of an American Whig, you can see that there are similarities there. But one thing to notice is that even in this essay, Iredell still expresses allegiance to the crown, but he calls for proper constitutional government over and over and over. So it's the Albemarle region, it's a place of grassroots activity. It's also a place of intellectual thought.